49ers scouting director, actually director of player personnel is his official title, talking about the San Francisco 49ers prospects, what he saw in these guys to make them future San Francisco 49ers, and some insight to the 49ers scouting process. Coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Getting the Friday pod for you a little bit later today. Croc's been watching his kids graduate from high school. Big life events going on in Stockton and Croctown and in all around the Locked On fam. So congrats to all of them. And thanks for showing up here with us today and making us your first listen. And you can subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And Croc, first of all, congrats on another trip around the sun for you. Happy birthday. Belated. I wished you a happy birthday when I found out it was your birthday before it was your birthday, but also really cool. I saw some pictures on Instagram of, the graduation, and it's a really cool time for you. So Daddy Crocky doing big things right now.
Yeah, man. I'm not very emotional, but man, having two kids, both the boys, my son and my stepson, and I've been in my stepson's life since he was 5. So they're born 2 weeks apart. Just so happened that they just were on the same track with everything. And their graduations, one was in Arizona, one out here in California. And then so I had to go from one graduation to the other. It was a busy few days, but I wouldn't change that for anything. I got a little emotional, man. And it was cool though. It was cool watching both the boys, great kids, having two kids, they don't drink, they don't smoke, they've never been in trouble, they get good grades, they're going to college. It's like, what more can you ask for?
That you know of.
That I know of.
I've seen so many instances of these kids from afar, just through you and on the socials, and they do look like good kids. So great job there, and always an exciting time. And
one of them, I got shout out Juice. So little Juice okay. Crocker, graduated this last year, man, 4.5, and he has all these tassels and 4.5 grade point average, man. Shout out to Juice, man.
Doing extra.
Goes into college. Now here's a cheat code for
I thought it only went up to 4, Croc.
If you have like advanced placement, like college prep classes and stuff like that, could boost your GPA. This dude goes into college as a sophomore. He already has his freshman year completed. So great stuff from Little Crocker.
Damn, he's on
little big Crocker. He's taller than me, but both of the kids are taller. They're both boys taller than me, but
and you got some height too. So 6'2" plus. I mean, that's unbelievable. Like, he's on a very different plane than I was going into college. Like, I was barely getting out. I was probably 2.5 instead of 4.5 getting out of high school. I ended up screwing around with getting my college degree finally 10 years later after I graduated high school too. He's going in as a sophomore. That would have been very beneficial to young Peacock, that's for sure. So yeah, congrats to him, man. He's putting in the work. You got to put in the work for that, bro.
Yeah, put in a lot more work with the academics than I did, but that's the goal. Have your kids be better than you, and both of these kids definitely better than me coming out of high school for sure.
And it was a graduation for college prospects into their professional lives in the NFL draft, and the San Francisco 49ers have a large class of those draft picks, Croc. And I'm looking at Matt Barrow's article in The Athletic that kind of breaks down all of Tariq Ahmad's comments about why they drafted these guys. And they talked earlier this week, and Tariq Ahmad, the team's director of player personnel, kind of going through all the players and what they liked in them, and what the process was like for the San Francisco 49ers to land on these 11 draft picks and how they all fit for the San Francisco 49ers and into the roster. And I guess we can start with Mykel Williams. And basically, he said that it quote, matched up with everything the school told us. The intensity, the passion, he made a great initial impression. And kind of goes through the theme of this. And when you hear Tariq Ahmad talk about how they ended up really falling in love with these prospects, a lot of it happened kind of late in the process at the combine, Croc, and all the meetings. And I think that's something the 49ers have really leaned on is the people that they're bringing in and the conversations they have with them. And I think when you get to the point where you're a top 50 prospect, the tape is going to be good. So you have to be comfortable with the human being and the person and what they're going to bring to your locker room, what they're going to bring to the culture. And that is a really common theme with all these guys. And it definitely was with Mykel Williams, their pick in round 1, who they tried to trade up for. They liked him so much.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things, right? Going to the NFL and trying to figure out how a guy's game translates, or is he gonna, end up improving in certain areas. And it's all about work ethic. It's all about mindset. It's all about how bought in they are on, the culture of wherever they're going. And there's some guys that want to do things their way, and it doesn't quite pan out, and they don't give forth that right effort. But when a guy checks all the boxes pre-draft, and then you kind of get him, and you get a chance to see him, and it's like, oh man, we really love everything about this kid. And I think that's why the 49ers, even if we feel like, oh, they may have reached for a player, right? I don't even say that's what's out there with the consensus. The 49ers, they overdraft guys more than others, but they're drafting guys from a mental standpoint, not even just X's and O's, but just who they are as people that they feel like meshes with what they do as an organization. And more times than not, that ends up doing well. Now, there's always also one big whiff, and that's Trey Lance. But everybody else, even a guy like Solomon Thomas, it didn't work out, right? We'll definitely say he's not worth the number 2 overall pick. But this guy's in the NFL still. And I said number 2, number 3. They had the number 2. They traded back one spot, but he's still in the NFL. He's on the Dallas Cowboys. He's moving around. He's productive. Like, he's staying on rosters. So although they didn't get his ceiling right, they still got the floor right in the sense of just being an NFL player.
And you guys should all go check out Matt Barrow's article in The Athletic. Barrow's always does fantastic work. And we're going to kind of go through and pick some quotes and pick some stuff from all of these players that the 49ers drafted in April. The story that stood out to us, Ahmed says, was when Mykel Williams had that ankle injury. And national scout Steve Rubio went to Georgia for a practice and noted that Williams not only took every practice rep, even though he was injured on the bad ankle, but practiced for another 20 minutes after the formal session ended. And you think about a guy like Fred Warner, who didn't shut it down this year, even though he had a broken ankle in week 4 and the 49ers season wasn't going well, and he still played through it. And I think it's something the 49ers like and expect. And in the NFL, how often are guys actually really 100% healthy? And the other part of it was Ahmad said that, obviously they liked him enough to try to trade up for him in the first round of the draft, and they didn't really want anybody to know about it. And so there was that late workout post combine in the draft process where Mykel Williams and his teammate Walker worked out for scouts, and the 49ers didn't go to that workout, but Tariq Ahmad really wanted to. He said, I really wanted to go for Mykel's workout at Georgia. I was itching to go back, but John thought it was a better idea just to watch the tape. So John Lynch didn't want to let people know. And so they actually didn't go in person to that workout and just watch the tape of the workout. And it all turned out, and then he ended up falling to the 49ers at pick number 11. But what about the injury stuff? I think that's huge. And he said that story really stood out to them. And I'm not surprised at all that they like guys who aren't going to shut it down, guys that are willing to play through potential pain. There's hurt and then there's being injured. If you can play, the 49ers love those types of guys. They're going to play through it. And it says a lot about why they liked him so much.
Today I held a team meeting with my squad to go over, just the offseason and what to expect. The summer schedule and leading into our actual season. And I had a player miss because he had a tummy ache.
Ooh.
So yeah, I know in my mind, I hear that like, what? He didn't come because of what? A tummy. He has a tummy ache, right? It makes you feel a certain way about that player. But when you have a player that's going out there and he's competing and it's like, hey, I got a flat tire here. Yeah. And I got one good leg, one good foot, but man, I'm going to give you everything I got. That really definitely can change how you view someone, especially when when they are healthy, it's like, well, they're really good when they're healthy. Man, you tell me this whole time he's playing and he had kind of a flat tire here and he's still going hard and we still like what he put on tape. That's the kind of guy I can get behind. So that does say a lot about someone, because there are people that shut things down for different reasons. And I want the guy, give me the guy that's too aggressive. Give me the guy that's too risky, because I feel like I can kind of tweak things and kind of turn it down a notch.
Yeah.
But to get somebody to turn it up, that is very, very difficult.
Yeah, that's one thing I've not seen on an injury report in the NFL. Tummy ache. That's a good one. I like that one a lot.
It pissed me off. I'm not going to lie.
I can imagine that would tick off a coach, and you want guys that are going to play through it for sure, and certainly playing through tummy aches, especially when you put it like that. Like, it could be a stomach virus. It could be something that sounds bad. Tummy ache. Don't see that on the injury report too often. Let's talk 49ers second round pick, third round pick, and beyond. And is there potentially more pass rush here from some of these rookie defensive linemen that they did not show on their college tape? Tariq Ahmad and the 49ers think so. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Gametime and the Gametime app. And there's nothing like the NBA playoffs, the intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds, and it's the kind of atmosphere you must experience live. And this year's matchups already delivering. If you want in, Gametime makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. And there's nothing better than a playoff atmosphere, no matter if it's NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, college sports, high school sports. Prices on the app actually drop the closer it gets to tip-off. And with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seats, and no surprise fees, Gametime is a total game changer. It's not just for sports tickets either. Concerts, comedy shows, theater events, you can find it all at Gametime. And let's be honest, you're a sports fan. If you're listening to this podcast, it should be in your pocket at all times. You should have Gametime on the ready, because you know you're going to want tickets to an event. You know you're going to go see a concert. You're going to want to go to a show. And you should always have Gametime handy and check in with Gametime before you buy any tickets to those events. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Peacock, real quick, to follow up on some of the things that Tariq Ahmad and the 49ers liked about their first round prize pick. The one thing I will say, all right, as it pertains to Michael Williams, or it could be anyone else, I don't want to fall in love with them because of the grit. And that's when you can get in trouble a little bit and potentially overdraft somebody. Like, let the film make me fall in love with the guy. Let me watch the film and just say, man, this guy's deniable. And then you hear about the grit, and then now that takes you over the top, as opposed to you watch him, man, like, then you find out, like, man, this guy's gritty and he's a hard worker, and man, he's playing. Oh, I really love this kid. You don't want that to make it. You don't want that to be the reason why you make him the pick. It's got to be the athleticism, the traits, the ability, the film that jumps off the charts, and then the person seals the deal for you. So I hope it was more so of that.
I love that you brought that up, Croc, and I wanted to bring it up a little bit later, but we can get into it now. And this is not a knock on Tariq Ahmad or the 49ers or their process. I mean, I have had questions about their process at times before, and I think it's clear that it's a coach-driven process that the 49ers go through. And you hear Tariq Ahmad talk about a lot of this, and a lot of the stuff he's talking about is very late in the process, talking about the combine. Heard Kyle Shanahan talk about the gauntlet drill, the combine for Jordan Watkins, and some of these things. And it's not just the 49ers. I remember right after the draft, the initial Raiders press conference, they asked Pete Carroll, what did you see in Ashton Genty, the running back? Why did you like him so much? And he's like, oh, he was hard to tackle. It's like, the most simple answer possible, right? And it's like, we do so much work as analysts, and so many people do so much work as analysts. And I almost want to hear a coach or a scout or a GM wax poetic about all the intricacies of a player. Man, I love this, and I love how he plays this, and I love his strengths and weaknesses, talk about the game. And you hear him say, well, we liked his gauntlet drill. I'm like, well, you liked his gauntlet drill? That's not the answer I want to hear about a guy you just drafted in the 4th round. Like, I like that, you play on a hurt ankle, but what I want to hear is, man, this guy does this and he annihilates offensive linemen. And I think he's going to fit great because he can do this and X, Y, and Z. And he's got this kind of skill. And then he can do a little bit more of this. And we think he's got the athleticism to bring this. And you want to be excited about it. And I don't really feel that excitement. And I think it's part of Tariq Ahmad's personality. He's a pretty buttoned up guy. But I want to hear a GM, a coach, a scout be excited about the tape and go a little bit. And maybe he thinks he's talking over people's heads sometimes with some scouting jargon. So maybe that's why he goes to some more easily, available stuff that was televised, like the combine, or tell stories about how a player played through a certain injury. But I'm with you, Croc. And I came away with some of the same takeaways when I'm listening to some of this stuff about the 49ers draft picks. And again, it's not to say that anything was good or bad or not to knock Tariq Ahmad or anything, but I don't love the idea of drafting a guy because you liked his gauntlet drill at the combine, like, period. Like, that's not I don't want that to be the first thing you bring up about a prospect.
And I think that's the part where sometimes you can just kind of miss on something, especially when you have opportunities to get someone else that maybe has more of what you're looking for on the field, as opposed to just killing a drill at the combine.
Yeah,
that's got to be not even secondary, like the third thing. It's got to be film first, and then obviously like the person, and then he killed out a drill and that stood out to you. All right, or now maybe if you say the gauntlet stood out to where we had to go and reevaluate him or give him a deeper look, because there's been those times, right? You look at a prospect, let me go back and look at this prospect again because something stood out. Maybe he tested better. Then you start to kind of look for examples of that. If the gauntlet made them go back and look, all right, I'll give him that. But if that's look how sweet he was in that gauntlet drill. He didn't slow down at all. He just kept going. He cocked the ball with his hands out in front of him. I don't know about falling in love with a player because of that, or that being the thing that really jumped out to you about the prospect.
Right. Or, how it relates to he does this on the field. And if you go watch his gauntlet drill, the combine, you can see that translate to that drill, and you can see why. And he does all of this, and he showed it on tape. And you can, here's an example that was televised that you can go watch yourself if you don't want to, if you want to go check it out, that kind of thing. So just interesting notes there, and something to log and remember when we think back about these prospects in a few years and look how these guys ended up. They were really excited, though, about Alfred Collins, second-round defensive tackle, mountain of a man, 6'6", 332 pounds, out of the University of Texas. And he said, quote, Alfred could get off blocks and cover a short area very quickly. One of the things he kept telling me about Alfred when he was talking about his so basically there was a connection here with Tariq Ahmad, who was, I think it was for 7 seasons he spent at Rutgers University with assistant coach Kyle Flood. Kyle Flood is now Texas's offensive line coach. And Tariq Ahmad said, quote, one of the things he kept telling me about Alfred was that Alfred destroys practice. He's the hardest guy they had to block on the interior of the defensive line, getting off blocks, creating knockbacks. And that's definitely something you see on the tape. So I like this, that he's talking about some of the stuff you see on tape and some of the things that happen on the field with, you see him create some knockbacks. You see that power. I'm not so sure about the short area quickness and the burstiness and the twitch that Tariq Ahmad brings up there. So that's an interesting aspect, something they saw there. And they do think there's athleticism, and that he said, quote, he doesn't attack like we attack, but because of his length and his power, we feel we can get that out of him. So he does see more from Collins as a pass rusher and being able to one gap and get upfield more than he did when he was two gapping in the college level. So definitely some projection there based on the tape. I'm somewhat skeptical about how much more of the pass rush he's going to give you, but Tariq Ahmad and the 49ers believe there's a lot more there with Alfred Collins.
Yeah, I like that. Looking for, an area of ability that says, you know what, we can get a little bit more out of him in this aspect of his game. And that was one thing that I kind of brought up with Alfred Collins as well. Remember, I was like, he's a better athlete than I was expecting to see. Now, how do you see that athlete consistently? Because everything else that you said about him in the scouting report definitely was true. But in those glimpses of showing Croc and Peacock what they want to see, how do you get that to be more consistent? And I think that's when 49ers said, well, as a coaching staff, we can coach him up to do those things. So there's that also means that there is a bit of projection with that. And there's a projection with every pick, but there is a different projection when a guy does a certain thing and you like it, and then, all right, cool, let's draft him. And then, okay, we'll see. Hopefully it translates to the NFL the way we hope it does. But when a guy doesn't quite do it or doesn't do it consistently, and you're hoping you can coach it into him, that is a much bigger projection that you're messing with there.
A couple notes on the other 49ers defensive linemen that they drafted here, and then we'll get into some other prospects that the 49ers selected and Tariq Ahmad's comments on him. Let's go to CJ West, the 49ers fourth-round defensive tackle, who, quote, was someone we still think has a lot of untapped upside. He's someone we're going to have to teach how to get off the ball the way we get off the ball. He is a powerful, heavy guy. He's got twitch. He's got short area movement. He's got instincts. We really felt his size and quickness while he was there. And he was a great interview as well. So talking about the Shrine Game where they interviewed him and thought he was awesome and showed off his athleticism at the Shrine Bowl and the interview they had with him there. And I agree with everything that Tariq Ahmad said there. And he's kind of another one that's very similar there in a way that, okay, you are allowed now, and maybe you weren't in your former scheme, you're allowed to get upfield. So let's utilize that athleticism, utilize some of that twitch and power, and get off quicker and get upfield more. And that's something that you and I both saw on tape and thought, man, there is something where he doesn't get upfield as much as you think he should be able to. Will he be able to now with the San Francisco 49ers? And again, with both, and really with all the 49ers rookie defensive linemen, how much more untapped pass rush is there than we saw in college will be huge for how good and how high the ceiling is for all three of these guys. But they're going to be good run defenders, no doubt, out of the gate. Next, Croc, let's talk third-round picks, the undersized guys, what they liked out of Upton Stout, Nick Martin, and some of the day 3 picks for the San Francisco 49ers, according to their scouting director. Next. On third-round linebacker Nick Martin, this was one of those players that built a consensus in the room, Croc. Apparently, everybody loved Nick Martin in the building. Quote, he was definitely one of our consensus guys. We had him at that combine interview, and everyone was extremely excited about him. He was a guy we were targeting. It's important when we're considering how the rookies are going to mesh together, who's going to be the leader of that group, who's going to push guys and watch extra tape to be on the field. And here's another guy that even when he was hurt, there's a story about how Nick Martin was still very involved with practice and even acting as like almost an extra coach. And one of the things the 49ers thought was that he's even potentially has the ability to maybe wear the green dot at some point for the San Francisco 49ers. Not that he would be competing at middle linebacker early, but who knows, post Fred Warner, or if Fred Warner gets hurt, who would be the middle linebacker? It sounds like the 49ers think that Martin might be someone who could potentially fill that role as well. And two-time team captain in college was Martin, even though he missed some time in his second year.
I think the big thing with Martin is really just the explosiveness and coaching that up on a consistent basis. But there were some things on film I think we would have liked to see more, maybe playing a little bit stronger at the point of attack. That's an area that I feel like he can definitely get stronger at. Did you see that at all on film with him?
The speed part of it?
Well, no, the speed was there. The ability to like disengage off of blocks.
Oh, yeah, that was the big weakness from him, was he was kind of a run around the block guy, and he's not very big, so I would see why he would utilize his athleticism. He even talked about it after the draft. He's like, yeah, I tried to find ways to get around blocks without essentially taking them on. And, Dre Greenlaw showed a lot of that in college as well. He kind of ran around blocks and started taking them on a lot more. So they probably asked him to be a little bit more physical. Again, he's only 220 pounds. About that comparison to Dre Greenlaw, Ahmad said body structure wise, they're a little different, but the aggressiveness, physicality, play speed, passion, there's a lot of ways to compare those two guys. Everyone's different, but we're hoping. So, yeah, that's the thought there. But, yeah, I would say the physicality, maybe running out of some plays as well, because he's fast when he can go get it and when he's clean. But when not clean, then, he's 220 pounds. That used to be a safety, and now he's a linebacker. So he's going to have to probably take on some of those blocks and run fit a little bit differently than he did in college.
Yeah, wrong shoulder or keeping that shoulder free. Those are things that you just have to do. If you don't, and you try to run around blocks, especially at the NFL level, it's going to create massive holes and run lanes. So you have to take it on a certain way to where you kind of stop that blocker and then be able to squeeze it down, ideally.
Speaking of passion, that was something the 49ers loved about Upton Stout, the 49ers late third rounder, nickel cornerback. He said, we absolutely loved his passion. Every time he walked into the room, he lit it up. It's similar to the way he plays, and you absolutely see that in the way he plays. Ahmad talked about his demeanor on tape, his aggressiveness, and those are things that absolutely stood out. And he said, that's who we want to be on defense. We want guys who play fast, process quickly, and then have the mentality of being aggressive. We want people who strain to get to the ball, similar to Malik, and who constantly is straining to get to the football. And even though he's not very big at 5'8.5", that's definitely how Stout plays.
Definitely. Scout is a guy who, especially around the line of scrimmage, you see that physicality, you see that toughness. Another thing that they liked about him was his swagger. And that's a big thing for me. I feel like, especially as a defensive back, you kind of have to have that, right? You got to have that mindset of, like, I'm very confident in my abilities, what I do, the different ways that I can do it, right? Because that's the one position where, one bad step and it's a touchdown. And you have to be able to mentally to get that behind you and really make the next play the most important play. And if you're not this confident guy, if you don't have that swagger, I almost want it to be to where you feel like it was an accident or it was luck that they made a play on you, right? Like, man, that won't happen again, right? Having that kind of swagger about yourself. And that was something that they liked about him, not about just getting beat, but just the way he carries himself.
Moving on to Jordan Watkins, and Tariq Ahmad did mention a reason why they like the gauntlet drill at the combine. He said, we think it's one of the best measures of natural hands. Can they stay in a straight line and naturally pluck the ball and react and do it again? And Watkins did reach 19.78 miles per hour during the gauntlet drill, the second fastest among the receivers, and his PFF numbers support those good hands. I believe he only had 6 drops last season, or maybe his entire college career. Yeah, 6 drops over his entire college career. Even though, he wasn't the most heavily targeted guy in the world, but, hands wasn't a problem for Jordan Watkins. And by the way, he did run a 4.37 40 at the combine. And Ahmad went on to say, like, this was obviously a Kyle Shanahan pick. He said Kyle was a big fan. He was a very big fan of his, speaking of the 4th round wide receiver, Jordan Watkins.
I wonder what it would look like if they allowed someone else to pick the receivers. And that's not to say that Kyle doesn't know what he's looking at, but he drafts so many of the same guys. Like, if you just ask, my favorite type of receivers, like, it would probably be the Brandon Ayuk, the Ricky Pearsall, but there's nothing wrong with adding that T. Higgins to give you a little bit more kind of versatility in your offense. Like, there's nothing wrong with, adding a Jamar Chase, right? And that might seem simple to, Jamar Chase, of course, but he's a little different. He's same in height, but the way he wins is drastically different than the way a Brandon Ayuk or Ricky Pearsall and those guys win. And Kyle gets so one track minded with how he wants his receivers to win that there's very little room for error for the most part. Even like people might look at Deebo Samuel, like, well, he's different. Go back and watch Deebo Samuel coming out of college. He looked a lot different than the Deebo we've seen over the last couple of years, just in the sense of the way he was able to win. He was winning with routes. He was able to win with quickness, with feet. His bursties, catching slants right after catch. Kyle Shanahan covers that. So, I would like someone else to, like, Kyle, get your guys, right? You picked your guy last year, 1st round. Let me pick the 3rd, 4th round guy. Let me pick the 5th round guy. Almost like he allows them to do with the quarterback position. Ronnie Bell, I watched the film and I'm like, man, what's he like? Then I watched him block and I was, oh, that's what Kyle likes. Like, look how aggressive he is blocking, right? Instead of maybe getting a guy that's 6'3" and fluid and can run and giving a guy like that a chance. because they've had some come through and he just disregards them every time.
And it's not just Kyle. Like it's all the position coaches. Like Chris Kasarik was, obviously leading the charge on a lot of the 49ers defensive linemen that they drafted. Chris Furster was, finally got a chance to pick a guy he liked, and it was Connor Colby, the 7th round guard. And so the 49ers coaches have a big part of the process. Robert Saleh talked about it last month when he came back and had his first press conference with the 49ers. And I think that's why so much of this is important late in the process with the players the 49ers end up drafting, because when the coaches really get involved, that's when a lot of the decisions are made. Jordan James, I think, is similar. The 49ers were at the Oregon Pro Day, and they brought everybody to the Oregon Pro Day, and Oregon had so many good prospects. And Ahmad said, we were standing right behind him at the Oregon Pro Day. We thought he had an excellent workout. And he went on to say, we spent a lot of time on running backs this year. It was a very deep group, and there was definitely an opportunity for us to get someone anywhere from the 1st round through the 7th round. And I think we walked away with 2, including Corey Kiner, who they had a draftable grade on, that can help us. Talking about the Jordan James and Corey Kiner, the 2 running backs the 49ers ended up with that will be rookies this year. So that's interesting. They spent a ton of time, and this is the guy they ended up liking in a class with a ton of running backs. And I do like Jordan James. I think he's a pretty complete guy. He might not wow you, but I think it was a solid draft pick. But again, it was late in the process. So Pro Day helped close that deal for the 49ers to really fall in love with him. So interesting there.
Jordan James, I think a guy that both of us like once we put on that film. A lot of ability there, quick feet. I think he runs, from, within the first 10 yards of the line of scrimmage extremely well, just not as big of a game breaker as I think maybe most people would like to see. But I could see, just parts of his games that they really liked and a little bit different than some of the running backs that they've drafted in recent years.
One more player to note, I want to talk about Curtis Rourke. And again, you can go find all the quotes from Tariq Ahmad in the article from Matt Barrows in The Athletic. Basically, Curtis Rourke's profile was kind of like the Brock Purdy profile, like kind of going back to the well on that. A player that had played a ton of college football, that had elevated his program when he was in there, kind of the opposite of Trey Lance. I mean, Trey Lance did elevate for 1 year, but it was already a great program on that level. Looking at attempted passes, Rourke attempted 1,283 passes at Ohio and Indiana over the course of his 5-year career, just a few less than Brock Purdy did in his college career. Trey Lance only 318 passing attempts in his college career. It's pretty unbelievable. And Ahmad said it's something we value. We value meaningful reps, game reps at all positions, and especially at that position. And Rourke not only had the reps, he played the position at a high level. And then again, Mick Lombardi, 49ers new quarterbacks coach, was a big part of this, as was Brian Griese when the 49ers drafted Brock Purdy in the 7th round. Talking about Lombardi, he just attacks the tape. He had his list done a month before we were going to review quarterbacks. So we were talking about all these guys for a month, and Curtis was someone that he really, really liked toward the top of his stack. So that is some thoughts from Tariq Ahmad and some insight into the 49ers rookie draft picks. And then, I don't know, what do you think? What do you think overall the process real quick before we go? Croc. Interesting that he brought up everything he brought up. Not everything. He brought up so many specific things about late process, pro days, who the coaches liked, and combine stuff. Instead of like, you're the scouting director, you're a former scout. Oh man, this is what I loved on tape. This is what I loved on tape. You didn't hear that much from him. You heard a little bit of it there from like the defensive tackles, but not that much. I think that's kind of telling of the 49ers process.
I mean, I guess how much say and input does he have on the process?
Yeah, I want.
or do they go about it as more of a collaborative effort?
That's a huge part of it. And he didn't say this was my favorite guy, right? About anything. But he talked about whose favorite guy everybody was. And for sure it's collaborative. And I think it's a great strength that the 49ers have. And I think if you are, and I remember I was asked this with Rand Carthon by the Locked On Titans host. And it was like, okay, what does Rand Carthon bring? What is he going to bring from the 49ers? And I said, well, he's going to, if they've had a weird process, right? And at that point, the 49ers had drafted Lance, and that was a bust. But then they've been awesome on day 3. And it's like, you can't really write in your how to build a franchise notebook, let's light first round picks on fire and then be historically great in like the 5th round. Like, that's just a hard thing to be like, this is how we're going to do things. But I think the collaborative effort and how they work together, and hit or miss, John Lynch goes out and gets Kyle Shanahan's guys, and Tariq Ahmad is part of that process, going and getting Chris Foerster's guys and Mick Lombardi's guys and Brian Greasy's guys. And so Chris Kusuric's guys. So that's going to be a big part of it. It's collaborative between the scouting department and the coaching staff. And I think in a lot of ways, what the scouting department does for the 49ers is they bring it, like when you go to a restaurant, they bring out the cart, right? The dim sum cart, and here's the prospects. And then the coaches get to choose which one of the prospects that they curated for them and cooked up for them. Like, which one of these guys do you want? And they're like, I want that dumpling right there. And that's how the 49ers process works. It's definitely different in other buildings around the NFL.
Big Bob talks about comparing the Chiefs and the Eagles draft versus 49ers. And he said, compared to Super Bowl rings, and said, games are won in the trenches. 49ers ignore O-line. They are not going to find success with that process. Crazy thing about the 49ers, when they put together some of their better teams, I felt like O-line was a priority. And as of late, I think part of it is just the draft picks you used on Trey Lance. I think that kind of skews a lot of our vision on it. But maybe they do need to get back to that. I mean, we saw Scott McLuhan and Trent Baalke and those guys draft 2 offensive linemen in the first round. I wanted Des Bryant, but they drafted 2 in the first round. But that was how big of an importance it was. And when you watch how they played, they wanted to be more physical than everyone. They wanted to beat up on everyone. They wanted to push guys around. And they were able to do that for a while with Anthony Davis and Micah Patti.
Yeah, and it's definitely something to monitor. And, depth is worse than it was last year. You've got some looming potential big decisions in the future and big positions. You might need potentially 2 new offensive tackles as soon as next offseason. And so it's definitely something to monitor there. And at some point, I would say for the 49ers, and I look, it's not easy to find a perfect offensive tackle. And if there is one, those guys go really high in the draft before the 49ers have had a chance to select. But at some point, you have to like a guy enough to draft them and develop them. And the 49ers have acted like they just don't like anybody enough to ever draft and give that opportunity to and develop them. And the thing is, I think Chris Foerster is a really good coach and would be able to develop one of these guys, because look what he's done with some other guys that are less talented. So give him a talented guy, as raw as he might be, and let Chris Foerster go to work. And maybe it's not year 1, but maybe by year 2, year 3, you got a really good starting caliber offensive tackle that you drafted outside of round 1. But they haven't had a chance to do that. And next draft, they might have no choice but to attack that position very early. And you hope they're not forcing it at that point, because it's, they waited too long. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you are subscribed up and drop us a line on YouTube or anywhere you listen to this podcast. Croc and I back Monday right here, Locked On 49ers.